place in our valley at one of our outdoor venues. We had more than 520 people injured, 58 deceased citizens as a result of that incident, and more than 200 patients transported to area hospitals by EMS crews, some by fire crews, some by EMS crews. Our hospitals saw over 500 patients. It's amazing the amount of work that took place at those hospitals, the dedication of those doctors, those nurses, and the staffs at those facilities that did such a great job. We had a lot of challenges with this event, with this incident. And the challenges we had were because how complicated things were on where this venue was and how the people immediately, and rightfully so, began to extract themselves from the danger area. We had more than 32 reports of gunshot victims coming into our fire alarm office, which created 32 separate incidents instead of one main one. And that's common in an event like this, because they're just getting calls of this, and this person shot here, this person shot here. It took them a while to tie into hey, this is all under one incident number. So we have 32 incident numbers tied to this, and we're still trying to crunch that data into one usable format. We also had reports of, people would show up at hotels, say Caesar's Palace or other places where they were shot. Well, by the time that information got relayed out to our responders, both police and fire, it was there's a shooter at this location, where there wasn't a shooter at that location. It was just somebody that was shot that showed up at that location via Uber or running or whatever. So that complicated our response. And so for a certain amount of time that evening, we knew we had what was going on at the concert venue, and we're starting to think, are we having attacks at other locations? Again, our police officers, both Metro, I saw strike teams out there that night from Henderson PD, from North Vegas PD. They all came together as we have trained, and they addressed every one of those other sites that turned out not to be shootings, but just where victims ended up. We also had people jump the fence, break through the fences, and get into the airport property. They were laying in between the runways, trying to take cover because those areas are carved out between the runways and the taxiways. And then we had reports of gunshots fired at the airports. There's another example of we had a lot on our hands. A lot we thought was escalating when it was really contained, but we just didn't know because of so many calls coming in. We had to vet every one of those things out with a police response and a fire response. This is also the first time that we've deployed a rescue task force on a significant event. And we'll talk about what the rescue task force component is in a little bit, but it's something that's been worked on in this valley for many, many years. At the event, there was a standby crew of approximately 16 EMS paramedic personnel from Community Ambulance. They performed wonderfully under fire, literally under fire, taking care of patients that were right there in front of them in a very bad situation. So my hat's off to that standby EMS crew that was taking care of people there. There were also numerous civilians and off-duty fire and EMS personnel, not only from the local area, but from around the country, that immediately enacted what they're trained on. They started treating patients. They started helping people extract. They started doing the things that they were trained on, even though they were off-duty. Some of the gentlemen sitting in the front row today are members of my organization and our organization. I don't always take it personal, it's mine, but our organization that were there either as responders or concert goers that went into action that night. I have purposely, Monday morning, issued somewhat of a gag order to my organization. I did it again, right? To my organization to not speak to the media because this was a very, very traumatic event. We have people that are hurt from this event psychologically. And I did not want them to be addressed by the media. I did not want them to have to relive that immediately. We wanted them to go home. We wanted them to see their wives, their girlfriends, their parents, their kids. We wanted them to hug those people. We wanted them to decompress. And we wanted to control the opportunity for the media to interact with our people. And that's why we're here today. We're going to allow that after this event. You will be able to speak to members of our organization. As far as our organization goes, Clark County Fire Department, we've been somewhat planning on a major event in our valley for an awful long time along these lines. About 2010, we were one of the first organizations in the country to place one of our fire captains into the Fusion Center, the multi-agency counterterrorism fusion center hosted by Las Vegas Metro. Through that, we've built relationships, we've developed response plans, we've met the community on many different fronts, and we were able to build out a program to handle situations such as this. We also were first to have a deputy chief, foreseeing what was coming down the road in 2015. I promoted a deputy chief position from the battalion chief ranks, which is Deputy Chief Scott Webster right here. And all he does nothing with the fire anymore. His absolutely no responsibilities. His responsibilities are law enforcement integration, dealing with strict security executives and teams. How do we integrate with them? How do we get in and out of your properties? How do we help you stay safe? And doing counterterrorism work with the Fusion Center and the MACTEC group, which I'll talk a little bit more about. Through that stuff, we began training our personnel. We were building a policy that had never been built before. We built this policy and we've shared it nationwide. And it took an awful long time. It took years. We developed plans, we'd run drills and find out what was wrong. We'd come back to the table, we'd redesign it, go back out, do it again. And it took us repetitive cycles over years to get it to where we thought this is the format we want. It works in drills. This valley-wide policy is shared among all police and law enforcement agencies. Las Vegas Metro's MACTEC unit, these gentlemen right here, trained all the other police agencies in town, including they train with FBI, tribal police, all the police agencies in town are all trained to the same level of what they call MACTEC integration. I want to introduce Sergeant Clarkson from Metro. He's the head of the MACTEC division right now. Officers Bert Hughes, Dean Hennessy, and Bobby Chamberlain. They have been by our side through and through. And there's another gentleman that I would be remiss if I did not mention, because he was driving this really hard at the front end, and he's retired now. His name's Joel Martin. He was a lieutenant at Metro, and he was sort of the big driving force at getting this going back in the early 2010, 2011 area. So once the plan was built, we started running multi-jurisdictional drills. We've run drills at hotels, we've run drills at hospitals, we've run drills in schools, malls, and all kinds of things, because that's where historically these things were taking place. We never planned on what happened the other night. However, our training, our equipment, and the professionalism of our people took all of that and responded to that event the other night, because it was not anything that we planned on. An open venue, and patients, critically and mortally wounded patients, from Tropicana to Russell and some as far as Blue Diamond. It was not in one building, it was not in one spot, it was not in one address. It was spread over a massive area. We utilize our incident command system. It's a system that's utilized across the country to manage events. It gives us the ability to have one person in charge or two people tied together, a police officer and a fire chief in this incident, to run the incident, to work together, to bring the right resources together, and to limit the confusion of what one entity is requesting and what one entity is providing. Unified Incident Command saved lives. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that the fact that we were standing toe-to-toe, shoulder-to-shoulder with police officers at the battalion chief level and the lieutenant and captain level at the police department to integrate our response was critical. We've also performed reality-based training, where we've been in the situations with the police officers when they're engaging people as targets and training targets with their weapons. So some of our people have been around actual simulated gunfire with blanks during these events. So we've gone up and beyond, as far as I can tell, especially speaking of fellow fire chiefs across the country. They're very impressed. The one, we even talked to the cops. We love our cops, and they love us. And then so that paid off for us the other night in a way that we'd hoped if we ever needed it, but we never really wanted to have to use it. So as far as the response that night, our response time to that incident, I can honestly say, for our first arriving unit was less than 5 seconds. And the reason I say that is Fire Engine 11, who's stationed about a mile south on Las Vegas Boulevard, was coming back from a traffic accident call. They had hooked left on Reno, headed east, turned onto Giles, and the captain's like, that's gunfire. They were right there at the fence to the event. The captain picked up the radio and said, "Dispatch, do you have any reports of gunfire and something going on right now? Because I'm hearing a lot of gunfire." They said, "No." "Oh, yes, now we do." It was that fast. The floodgates opened on Giles and outpoured dozens and dozens and dozens of patients, critically, some mortally wounded, and swamped that engine company sitting in the middle of the street. So our first hands-on patients was just outside the fence on the east side of that venue, and our people did a great job. That captain, his name's Ken O'Shaughnessy, immediately called for what we call a first alarm medical assignment, which brings many, many different units, engine companies, truck companies, battalion chiefs, more ambulances, and he called, probably one of the most important things he called for separately, was our mass casualty unit, which we have outside today and you'll have an opportunity to see, walk around, and look at what we have prepared to respond to events like this in our community. We also had, notice, had 32 other calls. We had 32 other calls, and these calls are coming in, and dispatch is sending units to those calls. So we have the medical alarm coming, and then we have other units coming in to try to get to those other calls. So now our responding resources, because we're overtaxed at that point in time, are coming from 8, 10, 15 minutes away, because they're coming from stations as far away as DI and Topaz. They're coming from City Las Vegas. They're coming from farther areas. So we had to get our people down there. Those units that were inbound on that medical alarm by Captain O'Shaughnessy and the crew of Engine 11 were beginning to spin things up on the east side of that venue. They encountered all those patients in every direction fleeing. They were stopped. There was people dying. They dealt with them. There were people critically wounded. They called for ambulances. They got them out the doors, got them in the ambulances, got them to the hospitals as best they could. Branches, we talked about the incident command system, so I'll expand on that just a touch. Branches were formed. So you have an incident commander, and underneath the incident commander, we form branches. We had a south branch, and that's a geographical area that that person is put in charge of. They request resources, and they manage their event. So we had a south branch, we had a north branch, and we had an east branch. That's how we manage this situation. That's how we try to calm the chaos, so to speak, when things are going south. So now I'm going to reach into some of our equipment that we carry on our vehicles here. We were able to get this equipment years ago through some grant money to put on every single rolling piece of fire apparatus in southern Nevada. Southern Nevada, from Mesquite to North Vegas to Boulder City to Clark County, everything rolling down the road that's a fire apparatus has this stuff on it. Level 4 ballistic vests for our people. Those are able to stop rifle rounds. Level 3 ballistic helmets, able to stop handgun rounds. And then this fanny pack system right here, designed to treat upwards of 20 critically wounded patients. Things such as chest seals for gunshot wounds to the chest. Long needles to help lungs reinflate after they've collapsed because of air or blood. Different airway maneuvers, and a tagging system that's unique outside of our normal triage systems. We call it sifting and sorting. We've placed this stuff on our units. We have trained on it relentlessly. Tourniquets, a lot of tourniquets in there too is a big part of that. We trained on it relentlessly, and I have to harp on this over and over. Our training paid off. Our training paid off because we knew what to do. It was much grander than we ever envisioned. However, we were able to handle it because of our people, our training, our professionalism, and our equipment, and our relationships. So the MACTAC group, I talked about that. It's the Multi-Assault Counterterrorism Action Capabilities from Metro. They've been, as I mentioned, they've been with us side by side through this whole thing. We've been doing drills with them. And basically, in a nutshell, I won't get into how it's actually deployed, but we sat down with all the area firefighters years ago and said, we are going to integrate with the police department to get into people in hostile situations and control their bleeding, control their airway to save lives. Because we've learned the lessons from Columbine, we've learned the lessons from Aurora, and we, as an industry, have to move forward. And Clark County Fire and the Southern Nevada Fire Departments led that for this entire nation. Led by two people that I'm going to point out, they're going to be mad. Kittleson, Captain Kittleson, standing in the back room. He's very humble. He doesn't want to be recognized. And Captain Evan Hanna, standing in the back. Those two gentlemen, for the last 4 or 5 years, they've drove this boat. They've drove it from the fire department side of the fence with the police department and built this system along with the hostile MCI committee that came together to vet everything out. They've done this. They acquired the equipment through grant funding. They built this thing, and I told them yesterday, at some point in time, the enormity of what you have done for the United States Fire Service is going to hit them. Because what we're going to be writing in reports and what we're going to be sending up as a result of this incident is going to end up on Capitol Hill, in DHS, and in the Department of Justice. So the work they've done and the work we've done collectively as a whole is going to change the fire service across the country and the way we integrate with our law enforcement partners on critical events. So at this point in time, I'll take a few questions regarding the incident that night, some of our responses, and again, like I said, at some point in time, I'm going to call the questions off. I do respectfully ask, as you deal with the men that are sitting down here in front of me today, that you don't swarm them. They came back today. We had some meetings yesterday to talk about where we are as an organization, what we need to do to go forward mentally and psychologically to get better and stay healthy so we can have long, worthwhile careers. So please don't overwhelm them. They came back today specifically knowing that they are going to be at the throngs of the media. They're going to want to talk to you. They're going to want to interview you. They're going to want your story. And I want them to share their story because I know it's a healing part of the process. We had 108 firefighters there that night. Okay? We had 14 chief officers that all teamed up and did a tremendous amount of work to get this taken care of. And these guys are ready to talk. So with that, I'll take a few questions. Sir.
I worked with a couple of you guys last year on the actual shooter situation and some of the training that went into that.
Yes.
City Hall and then over at the headquarters here. How much of that training came in handy on Sunday night?
That training was, you know, it's very handy. It's not, I'm going to say handy, it's very important. That's exactly what we did. That was we formed 16 rescue task forces that night. And that's the rescue task force where we take 4 firefighters and 3 or 4 police officers and we put them into a group and we send them out. And those task forces that night weren't headed for the venue. We had 60 calls holding inside of hotels where people had huddled up at various hotels. Were calling 911 saying, I'm shot, I'm injured. But our dispatchers, and I'll talk about them in a minute, the dispatchers decided, through their questioning, determined they weren't mortally wounded, they weren't critically wounded, told them to shelter in place. We deployed those task forces to go into that area, not knowing if there was gunfire, not knowing if there was anything going on there, why those people were shot, because we still hadn't vetted out the other reports of shooters. We sent those task forces in there to clear out those 60 calls. 1 second, I did omit by mistake the Las Vegas Fire and Rescue Fire Alarm Office. They dispatch for Clark County Fire, Las Vegas Fire and Rescue, and North Las Vegas Fire. They did a tremendous job on what is normally a routine Sunday night. They handled calls, and if you've ever had an opportunity to sit on a call takers panel and listen to a citizen, another person, in absolute sheer terror for their life, for their loved one, those men and women at that dispatch office did a phenomenal job. They are heroes that just sat in one building and handled the phone calls, but they're heroes because they handled that business. They got people to where they needed to be. They handled the needs and resource requests of us as a fire department, as chief officers looking for our help. So I have to applaud them as they did a tremendous job. Yes?
Council, you mentioned this is going to change fire service across the country. Have other agencies reached out to you, and if so, what are you telling them at this point?
Yes, we have taught some of this across the country. Captains Kittleson and Hanna have taught this many times. I've had the opportunity to do it myself at some of the fire chief level venues that I've been to. And I could not even begin to count the number of phone calls, texts, emails I've received from my counterparts in the country, Canada, England, that I've interacted with over the years. To one say, good job, and others to say, hey, I remember you talking about that at our conference. Thank you. Could you send it to me again, because we really need to take another look at it. And many of them said, you hit it out of the park. You guys hit it out of the park. That was something that nobody had ever planned for, and you guys handled it, and we did. Yes, sir.
Could you explain in more detail how you mentioned that some of the victims were going to various hospitals and then reporting that there was a shooter at that hotel. How did that make the situation more difficult for you? And then after that, if there's someone here who's actually on scene, if they could describe the scene for us.
Okay, well, people that are on scene will speak when we're done. You can interview them. But as far as the reports of those other hotels, what that does is that complicates the matter. We know we got a lot of things going on here in the immediate area around that concert venue, but when you get a 911 call saying we've got shots fired at Caesar's Palace or we've got shots fired at a hotel as far away as Spring Mountain, that complicates our response. What is going on in our town? Is this a single event, or are we now under a Mumbai-style attack where we've got multiple things going on in multiple properties? So we had to handle that, and the police department did a wonderful job, and especially tied in with our firefighters that did a wonderful job.
Council?
Yes, sir.
Is there an estimate of time before the last patient was transported to the hospital? Or what did you guys do?
Hi guys, you're watching Fox 5 Live here in the DC Digital Newsroom right now. A press conference from Clark County Fire Department in Las Vegas with updates about the massacre on Sunday, of course, in Las Vegas. But I want to bring you over to another screen here. Rahm Emanuel, mayor of Chicago, is speaking in Chicago about their heightened security for the Chicago Marathon that is upcoming next week. Now, apparently the background is, and some of you may have heard this morning, the Vegas shooter had some possible predisposed plans to possibly make an attack on Lollapalooza, you know, the music festival in Chicago. Apparently he had booked some rooms at hotels that were surrounding where that music festival was going to be taking place in early August. So that's really some astounding news that police and FBI are trying to put together now. So this right here, just some updates on first responders and what all happened and how that all worked that Sunday. But I want to go over to Chicago, where Rahm Emanuel is talking about more specifically about Chicago. Quick double box here, lower right of your screen is a fire in DC that we're working on. It's in Logan Circle on the corner of 12th and Q Street. But I'm going to bring you up to Rahm Emanuel full screen so we can check in with what he's saying in Chicago.
Securing the route so people can enjoy what is a great international event. The world comes to Chicago, and Chicago goes to the world when we have this marathon. I want to say, particularly to all the runners, to wish you well and congratulations. I want to thank also the Bank of America and the marathon. I will be contributing a set of, I think, 2 or 3 different sets of gym shoes that they're raising for Puerto Rico, if I'm not mistaken. I will do a personal note because my son is also raising resources per mile for Puerto Rico for the relief efforts that are going on there. I will just say he gets the running from his mother and the fundraising from his father and that experience. But it's an effort I will note, and I want to thank them for making this also something that we also, while it shows the human spirit, one way is the test of going all 26.2 miles, but also the human spirit of also using this running to contribute and remember those that are suffering and do something to alleviate their own individual pain at this effort. So to everybody that's been part of getting and training and preparing for this, this will be a great event for the marathon. Records, as I said, will be set. And more importantly, we in the city of Chicago will show what the human spirit is made of. I want to congratulate everybody ahead, and then we'll take questions. Charlie?
Mayor, it looks like you've got more than 1,000 runners coming from around the country to participate in this marathon. And by the looks of the group behind you, you're taking a lot of effort to keep them safe. Wanted to ask you your reaction to the news that the Las Vegas shooter first looked at Chicago before doing what he did in North Vegas.
Yeah, I think as of last night, I would just say this, Charlie. Last night, and first of all, let me say this: there's 100 different countries will be represented here. 40,000 athletes from every state in the union, and 100 different countries. To that point, I think, and Alicia, you correct me if I'm wrong, there's been 17 different tabletop exercises starting over the last 12 months. Obviously, as Monday happened, there's been a double, triple checking of everything that goes in. But as I said the other day when we were at OAMC, Charlie, when something happened in Boston, even though we've had 30 plus marathons, we double check, triple check, and run through different scenarios. When something happens in Paris, when something happened in Brussels, something happens in London, we constantly are revising and asking fundamental questions about what goes on. I'm glad that also the FBI is here because, in fact, we work with a lot of our federal partners in that preparation for this marathon. And I think it's also important to note that even with the news, not only on Monday, but overnight, as it relates, we are going to go forward correctly with the Bank of America Chicago Marathon because it is the right thing to do, and people, it will not only be rewarding for athlete and audience alike, it will be setting records, and we're going to show what we're made of. John?
Talk more about your son, if you would. What prompted him to want to run, and give us more detail about it.
Because I told him to get out of the house. Look, he's a runner. You're laughing too hard there, Kerry. You must have a kid too. Yeah, too. Get out of the house. You know what? That couch is not for you. It's for me. Now get out of here. Now, on a serious note, he's a runner. And let me say 2 different things if I can. One, he's a runner. Ran in high school. He enjoys running. He kept it up in college. And he set a person, I will just say this, somebody who does sprint triathlons or has done a few. He set a goal for himself, and he wanted to, this was his idea. He set a goal for himself, and he wanted to do the marathon and prove that he could do it. And he has been training for this, I would say, take it 4 to 5 months. And it's a personal thing for him that he wanted to do, and he's been incredibly disciplined, both from the running, the drills. He downloaded an app that's used for training, his diet in that effort. In the last, say, week, he made a determination that, and he wrote, I think, a really, if I can, I'm going to get a little mushy, so I'm going to try. I think he wrote a beautiful note to people about it was one thing to feel sorry for yourself about all the pains and aches, and then you see what's happening in Puerto Rico, and you realize none of your pains and aches count. And he wanted to ask people to support and contribute to the relief in Puerto Rico. And as a father, I'm immensely proud of my son. Mike? Let me say one other thing. I apologize. I'm immensely proud of my son. I'm immensely proud also of all the other athletes who set a goal for themselves and then stick to it and train for it. It takes an incredible amount of discipline and effort to get to that point. Mike?
Obviously, Lollapalooza went well. The marathon, Lolla, those are not the only sorts of events there where these high rise pose an issue. You're confident that everything's being done that can be done?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. First of all, let me say this. There's a marathon, there's also the Cubs game, and there's also going to be Monday Night Football. And this is what the city of Chicago does. We're the city of big shoulders. We put on big events, we host them, and people enjoy them. And the team here, you're talking about now the high rises, they've been talking about this and doing exercises for this. But more importantly than just that is when Boston happened, we're, I think, one of the first marathons right after that, and we actually went through with our federal, state, and local partners and everybody in effort. But this is how we do big events like this. And this is where Chicago can really not just shine, but it's capable. And putting on this event for the million-plus spectators to enjoy it, and for the athletes to set records and do what they need to do. This is an effort that, as I said, while it is the Chicago Police and Fire Department and OEMC, the FBI is involved, ATF is involved, state security and safety is involved, counties involved in an unprecedented coordinated effort. And since it's our 40th marathon, this is not our first marathon in doing this. But you obviously take an event, whether it's Boston, Paris, or in this case, Vegas, and then you triple check, double check, and triple check everything you've done and ask some fundamental reviews. And this will be going on all the way until the runners start lining up at the start line.
Will there be any changes?
I'm sorry, John, I did this.
Will there be any changes for the spectators, not just along the start and finish line, but along the route regarding security?
So there's not going to be any changes for the spectators. It's going to be an open event, as it always is. That said, we learn from every event, every tragedy we learn from, and we learned from Vegas as well. So one of the things that we're doing is we're putting a significantly larger number of undercover officers. They're going to be intermingled with the crowd. They're going to be around the runners. They're going to be at the finish line. They're going to be at the start line. So we're going to have a significant amount of undercover officers that are going to be blending in there to keep an eye on things as well.
And is there any hotline that you have, like, see something, say something?
911 for sure. If anybody sees anything, then call 911.
I'm going to ask Alicia to say something. I'll call you in a second. I want to remind you, you may or may not have been at the OEMC. While you talk about all the federal, state, and local resources, and I'm going to ask Alicia to say a quick word, I want to remind everybody, as I said on the other day, you can talk about all that. The other day on CTA, a couple weeks ago, somebody got on the train and threw white powder. A commuter called in 911, knowing full well, see something, say something, that wasn't right. And so while there's important law enforcement security envelope being created, not being created, but that's been practiced and also then being deployed, as an audience / spectator, you have a role to play in that security envelope effort. Now, the good news is not only was there a person who called something in, but because CTA is ubiquitous with the camera network, just about, I'm doing this by guess, I think 96 hours to a week later, the Chicago Police Department picked up that individual. So when we say, see something, say something, it's not just a line we repeat. It actually gets drilled in, and people, the commuter on the train, knew that coming on a train and throwing white powder is not only not normal, could be something more serious, and they played a significant role not only in catching the person, but in securing an apparatus. And that system, from the 911 call to OEMC to CTA, fire, hazmat routine, police sending in. We actually did exactly how the system is supposed to work, and that's just something that happened 3 weeks ago on a daily commute in that effort. John, before I go to you, I'm going to ask Alicia to say something.
Thank you, Mayor. As the mayor mentioned, there are 38 different agencies that we have worked with, everyone from the local all the way through the federal piece. And whenever we look at an event like this, we look at everything from below grade to above grade. We don't look at it as a horizon. We incorporate all of our different agencies. We've had well over 50 different meetings as we sit down and we talk about the marathon. Once we finish the last marathon, we begin to look at the new one. And as was mentioned earlier, once we have something that has occurred either nationally or internationally, we take that back and we begin to evaluate, what if this happened here? How would we respond to it? Do we think we have a shortfall? If we do, we shore it up. Never is there a time that one of our plans looks exactly like the other plan, because we continue to refine and work on it. Matter of fact, I just left the public-private task force where we were meeting with the heads of the building security and the hotel agencies, talking about exactly what the mayor mentioned, which is if you see something, say something. What if it looks unusual, who do you report it to? And for us, that's 911. And to keep the city safe, we need to incorporate all of you all. As private citizens, if you see something that doesn't make sense to you, we'd ask you to make sure that you report it.
Given the number of call buildings we're talking about, is it practical to secure them ahead of time, or is this more just a react and see something? And how do you secure this many buildings ahead of time? Are you asking hotel operators if they get proactive stuff other than see something, say something?
So as I mentioned before, it's not just, there are a number of different hotels and high rises here. So we have to make sure that we educate folks. This is not the first time that we have gone out to the building, to the security of buildings, to our hotels and other agencies, and talked about, if you see something unusual and what those indicators are to report those. This is ongoing business, but we refine it. And as we found out what happened to this last event, we literally, right before I came here, I was meeting with those folks, talking about if you see something, make sure that we do this. I'll let CPD talk a little bit more about their plan, but I can tell you, we don't want to get into the tactics of how we're going to secure this, but I will tell you that we do have a very robust plan in place.
Thank you, Alicia. Mayor and this team has a very busy schedule, but what I would like to do is I want to get a photo real quick. We have some very special guests that are here with us today. The mayor talked about records, and I'd like to bring them up. The Chicago Police Department, the city agencies, corporate community, Bank of America has been a part of this. I'd like to get a photo with these guys. I'd like to bring up our 1984 and 1985 champion. He set the first world record in Chicago in 1984. Steve Jones. Steve, come on up here. The next individual, she just told me this is the first time she's been here in 15 years. What happened? This is crazy. You got to come back every year. She is the 2000 and 2001 Chicago Marathon champion. She broke the world record in 2001. She ran 2:18:47, the first woman to ever run under 2 hours and 19 minutes. Catherine Doreba. Welcome back, Catherine. The next individual is our reigning course record with a time of 2:17:18. She set that record in 2002. She is the reigning world record holder. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome her back to Chicago. Paula Radcliffe. The next individual is two-time world record holder. His record stood in Chicago for almost 12 years. He's won the Chicago Marathon 4 times, unprecedented. Amazing athlete. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for the great Khalid Kanuchi. We'll talk about the marathon. You know, they look pretty good. I don't know, you guys, what do you think? I think you guys should send them out on Sunday morning. What do you think? Mayor, we don't have a bib for you, so you're going to have to be a spectator. We're going to bring our chairs. Get these out of the way. I think we should have a nice round of applause for the 4 world record holders. Okay, we're going to shift gears, and we're going to bring some chairs up here and have a nice conversation with our champions who've joined us. I talked earlier about partnerships and working together and collaborating, obviously, with the city agencies, but we're also celebrating our 40th anniversary. This is also another anniversary. This is the 10th anniversary of the Bank of America's title sponsorship of the Chicago Marathon. We've had a great run. We're just getting started. And we're going to have our leader, marathon runner, Chicago Market President. It's my pleasure to introduce Paul Lambert.
Good afternoon, and I want to thank the mayor. I was listening to him tell a story about his son, and last year I had my son run, and I wanted to tell him he was going to have a better experience than me because I ran with my son. I didn't get to see him in the finish line because he finished about an hour and 15 minutes ahead of me. So, but congratulations to the mayor and his son. You know, I was on my way over here, and you know, the energy and the enthusiasm in Chicago. I don't know if you all saw it, but there's runners everywhere. They're finishing up, they're warming up for the big day, and it's just an exciting, exciting time in our city, and I love this week and this weekend. Now, I want to thank Harry Pinkowski. I go on record all the time as telling everybody he is the best executive director of any marathon in the world, so congratulations again, Harry, and well done for the 40th.
Peter, did you hear that?
So on behalf of Bank of America and our 6,000 employees that live and work in Chicago, we thank you so much for being here today. And we are just so proud and honored to be a part of this great event. And it's one of many events across the country and globally that we invest time and effort in to really be a part, and we believe so strongly in being part of the communities that we serve. You've heard about this, but I want to make a point that the marathon, it's not just an event. It is an incredible economic driver in the city of Chicago. So I think about this all the time. Over the weekend, there'll be $260 million, over $250 million of incremental economic impact that's spent in our city. People come in from all over the world. They spend about 4 days here, give or take. They shop, they stay in our hotels, they enjoy our restaurants, they do our shopping, they enjoy public transit, and they do what a visitor does when they come to Chicago. And many of them are only here for the first time ever, so we get a chance to really showcase our city, I think, at its best. And by the way, that $250 million equals 2,000 jobs and over $95 million of wages and salary for the weekend and all the effort around the event. The impact is not just in the city and not just in the 29 unique neighborhoods that we all run through and experience as spectators. It's really felt across Chicago Metro and frankly across the globe. You heard it from the mayor, over 100 countries, all 50 states, and really I think about it as our chance to connect Chicago to the rest of the globe, and it's something that we really are excited as Bank of America to be a part of. You know, the true success of the marathon is really the people, and I just wanted to reiterate some things that were said, but so we have over 40,000 runners that are going to be there. Importantly, 10,600 of those 40,000 runners that won't run 2-hour marathons are running for charity. They will generate, last year they generated close to $17 million of philanthropy and charitable money for over 170 charities, and those are not just local, but they're national and they're global. So there's a real impact on the charitable aspect, and something that I know Carrie and I and all of us are really, really passionate around. It's the thousands of spectators, and if you come out, you know, I've not been a spectator, I'm usually a runner, so I'm excited to do that this year, but if you come out, you know, there are 4 and 5 and 6 people deep at every turn in the marathon that are on their tippy toes trying to watch this.
Hey guys, if you are just joining us, we are talking about, or actually this is a live shot in Chicago. Mayor Rahm Emanuel was just giving some more details about security that they're putting in place in Chicago. And of course, a lot of this comes up after the massacre on Sunday in Las Vegas. So the Chicago Marathon, which is now what they've sort of switched gears to talk about, is on Sunday. Now they're kind of talking about some of the people who have made amazing world records in it and whatnot. And it's just a huge community event, just like the Boston Marathon, how it brings the city together, and it's a big driver of everything: tourism, athleticism, and community. The biggest news right now, and we're going to be talking to more people in Chicago later in the evening, but the biggest news during the day that has sort of come out is that the gunman had booked hotel rooms in Chicago during Lollapalooza this year. So that was early August. One of the hotels was on South Michigan Avenue, and the check-in was 2 days before the start of the festival, and the checkout was scheduled when it ended. So now police are working with the FBI. Authorities have been alerted. And this was the press conference that Mayor Emanuel had planned to discuss Lollapalooza and security for the city for the upcoming marathon, which you see now on your screen, and they're talking about it here. So that's really the latest on that, and that's why we're kind of talking about Chicago right now. We'll have more information from people there. But I want to bring you over totally different, switch gears to a local story, guys. There was a fire really just about 45 minutes ago in Logan Circle in Washington, D.C. So if you're a local, you might know the area, but it's on 12th and Q, and our reporter Matt Ackland, who I was actually out on the water with in a kayak this morning as part of 21st Century Fox Impact Week, volunteering for the community. We were picking up trash in the river. He jetted off to do his story, and this came up, and he did a really interesting Facebook Live just from the street about what was going on in Logan Circle. So take a look at this video that he captured. One of his friends, I think, tweeted this out to him. I'm going to get this up for you and then show you his Facebook Live on the fire that happened really just moments ago in Logan Circle here in D.C.
Chicago? I'm with Channel 5. I'm with Channel 5. I thought the PIO's over there. Stand by one. Yeah, no worries.
So yeah, guys, this was the Facebook Live from Matt Ackland just moments ago, really like 40 minutes ago. It looks like there's not too much more on this fire. I was trying to look for an update for you guys, but you can see sort of the picture below in the right corner of your screen with the black smoke, but it looks like in the video that kind of dies down, and there's not much more to the fire. I'm looking for a final word from officials on this, but if you're familiar with the Logan Circle neighborhood, lots of homes that look just like this. And this was a really good live that he took, so you can see sort of the brick and the castle-like turrets and the domes in the homes. But it looks like there were a heavy police presence on scene for this one. But I am believing that everything is under control and that has died down for now. So we're going to go back, guys, and all eyes are, of course, still on Las Vegas here. This is a bump shot of the Mandalay Bay Hotel. You can still see those two windows which were hammered out where the gunman put his rifles and massacred that crowd on Sunday. So still new details are emerging about this tragedy, and we have that. You probably have come on the channel to see some of that. We're going to be flashing around to whatever live sources that we have with any updates on that investigation, of course. But for now, let's take you out of that Logan Circle video and go back to Chicago, where they're discussing the Chicago Marathon for Sunday, and of course upcoming security measures that have been heightened for this event, as we heard that the gunman was possibly planning on being somehow involved in Lollapalooza, the music festival in Chicago, in early August. I have some friends that went to that this year. I have friends every year that go to it, and we've been chatting this morning, and it's just crazy to think that he had booked a couple of hotels on that strip, South Michigan Avenue, and FBI and local police there are working together to investigate more about that. So we'll hang out here and see what they have to say about security for the marathon, which is this Sunday. And then we'll take you back into the district for some more live news.
First half was very, very slow. Do you ever look back at that race and say, wow, that was probably a chance for me to break the world record?
Yeah, I do think about it. I think I had the ability to run the world record in my first try. I wasn't too greedy, and I'm not a person who takes, risks. So I wanted to win, but I thought I was able to run the world record in first try. I still remember that experience, and I thank you for recruiting me because you gave me the opportunity to compete here, and it turned out to be good.
It turned out to be
very good, by the way. Very, very good. And just one other question, which kind of gets to the unbelievable accomplishments you've all had. So I imagine as you're running, I'm imagining because I've never run at that pace, but if you're running at 2-hour pace, that there's a moment in the race where you realize that you're gonna not only win the race but may break a world record. So what was going through your mind, and how did that impact that accomplishment the rest of your career? Clete, you want to maybe kick it off?
Well, I knew that I broke the world record at the finish line because I still remember it was a cold day and it was windy and I couldn't see the clocks, the miles place at the end. So when I saw the big clock 2:05:42, I just screamed. And of course, breaking the world record always changed your life in many good ways, and I was more, people give me more credit, more recognitions, and I was able to get opportunities to help people all over the world. So it was nice.
When the gun went off. And that might sound strange, I suppose, but no, I was a journeyman runner at the time. It was only my second attempt at the marathon, but I knew I was as fit as anybody else in the race. I was faster over 10K than anybody else in the race. So I thought to myself, all I have to do is stick with these guys to 20 miles and then I can take off. Well, and that's exactly how it worked. Only I went at 19.5 miles instead of 20 miles. So, but I was just very confident in my preparation. As I said, I was a journeyman runner, so I got medals in World Cross, medals in Commonwealth Games, and my PR was 27:39 at 10K, so I knew I was fairly fast. But it's surreal, I think on days like that, you're going to win, and that was just one of those days. I had attempted it the year before in '83 and had to drop out at 16 miles because I hurt my foot the night before the race. I was staying here actually as well. So my main concern in '84 was getting to 16 miles and getting that bear off my back. I remember being at 10 miles and I turned to Rob DiCastello because I saw the clock and I can't remember, maybe it was low 48 or high 47 minutes for 10 miles, and I looked at the clock and asked Rob, is that right? And he goes, what, is it too slow for you? But then, getting past 16 miles, and Rob and I, there's a picture of us looking at each other just as we passed that mark, and it was like, okay, who's going to go first? At 18 miles, somebody tripped. I think it was Gabriel Kamau tripped, because there was a left turn and there was a water stop right on the corner. He tried to cut across me and Jeff Smith to get some water. Jeff caught his ankle, he fell down, Jeff almost fell down. I caught Jeff by the arm because I was really aware of where I was at and what was going on around me. I caught him by the arm and kept him up, and I thought, this is getting a bit dodgy, so I just made a move at 19 miles, following Kamau again, who had got off the floor and took the lead, but I never looked back after that. And I didn't even know what the world record was, as I said. 3 miles towards the finish, Chris Brasher, bless him, founder of the London Marathon, he's not with us anymore, shouted from the press track, Jonesy, 3 more miles at 5 minutes and you'll have the record. And I just thought he meant course record. I thought, oh, that's okay. I didn't have a watch on. And I was trying to follow this press truck, and cars are beeping and people are shouting. I think actually there's more people in the race than there were spectators on the course that year. Except for the home straight, which was flooded and lots of people. But I didn't really realize until I crossed the finish line. 2 cops jumped on me and said, hey buddy, you just broke the world record. Come on, come with us.
That's incredible. That's unbelievable. Wow.
That changed my life.
I can imagine. Catherine, any additional thoughts?
Yeah, thank you very much. When I think of my day that I broke the world record here, it just make me remember what I went through or what I was going through. In fact, I didn't have it in my mind that I'm going to break the world record, but I was all going for the course record because I had missed the course record by just some few seconds. I think it was 11 seconds. And I believed that in the year 2000 that I debuted in Chicago, I improved my personal best by more than 5 minutes. And I said, to get rid of 11 seconds is just like nothing. So as I was looking forward to break the course record, I just kind of killed two birds with one stone. So
why not?
It's really amazing, and also it kind of impacted in my learning because in my country, I remember I had missed to represent my country in the year 2000 for the Olympics, just because my time felt like it was a bit slower. And I was really looking forward to have that kind of a time, that to put myself at the edge whereby nobody will say, Catherine's time is not good enough. So by doing that, I proved to the world that yes, I'm good enough, and also to my federation. And I thank God for that.
Wow, you did. Wow. Paula?
Yeah, when I came in 2002, it was my second marathon, and I'd run the London Marathon that spring. And I think we'd been talking to Kerry before about coming to Chicago. But when I ran London Marathon, I was just trying to enjoy the race, run well, see how it went. And I turned up the mile and I saw the clock and I saw 2:18 on the clock. And I thought, the world record's somewhere around there. And again, I just missed it, as Catherine said, so I missed it by 9 seconds, but I didn't really aim to do it in that race at all. And I think I crossed the line, and immediately I said to Gary, my husband, right, we're going to Chicago. And so we spent all summer getting ready for Chicago, coming here, and we'd spent a lot of time building up to run the world record here and to try and beat that. So I think that's what's unique about the marathon, is you spend so much time, aside from any other race. I mean, maybe the 10K, the half marathon, you know you're going to break the world record, but most races you don't know until you cross the line. And here you've got to manage that, because you know you're on schedule to do it, but you also know it's a marathon and anything can happen in the closing stages. So as Khalid said, you don't know until you cross the line. You've just got to keep it all working towards that. But everything went according to plan during the race, but I couldn't allow my mind to kind of project ahead to having set it until I crossed the line.
Wow. That's awesome. Thank you all.
Wow.
Congratulations again, and we're honored to have you here, and thank you again. We're going to close it up here. Thank you all for being here and attending. Carrie and I will be around for any interviews afterwards, and the team, and so thank you again. And they'll all be around as well. Thank you again for being here, and have a great day. Thanks. We'll see everybody on Sunday.
And guys, as they close off this press conference in Chicago, we're going to take you back to Washington, D.C. We have a live camera right now where the Attorney General for D.C., Karl Racine, is joined by Mayor Muriel Bowser. They're discussing a decision whether or not to seek Supreme Court review of a new decision that will perhaps invalidate a portion of the requirements that are needed to seek a permit to carry a concealed handgun. So this all coming, of course, when we're talking about guns, we're talking about gun control and guns in D.C. So let's take a listen here to the Attorney General and the Mayor, who are outside in Judiciary Square, right outside the courthouse, discussing this matter.
As well as Council Member Charles Allen, if he's inclined. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Attorney General. And I want to thank Attorney General Karl Racine and his office for their diligent work in this matter. I want to state clearly that we are supportive of the Attorney General's decision, and I underscore his disappointment in the Court of Appeals decision not to further rule on this case. And I want to make it clear, as the Attorney General did, that the the very sensible rules that apply to licensing guns, being trained for owning a gun in the District of Columbia remain in place. I want to make it perfectly clear that carrying a pistol without a license is a crime for which you will be arrested and charged and prosecuted. And what is also important is that everyone in the district knows that our police department will continue to work hand in hand with communities to keep our neighborhoods safe.
Thanks and good afternoon. I just want to also say that I appreciate and thank the Attorney General for the process by which he went through to get to this decision, and that I fully support it, and I think it is fairly meaningful that we have the executive branch and the legislative branch that stands in support of this decision. It is definitely not one that we came to lightly, and the Attorney General came to lightly. I think that, well, I believe that the good reason standard, I think we crafted a very sound law, that the decision and the weight of that decision is not just for the 700,000 residents right here in the District of Columbia, but for, frankly, millions of Americans. And so I think it is the right decision today, and I support the Attorney General. And as the chair of the Council's Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety, we'll continue to look at all of our gun laws and making sure that we've got a robust set of smart legislation and laws on the books that help protect D.C. residents.
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I was going to say something before Councilmember Allen, just to say that if there are questions about the legislative process, Mr. Allen, because he chairs our Judiciary Committee, is the one to speak to that. We're all standing here together because we are all standing together on this decision. Thank you.
Thank you. We're happy to take any questions, and note that some of the questions may be best directed to Chief Newsham. So with that, please, fire away. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, can you tell us, does something need to be done legislatively now, once, I guess, the circuit court, the district court does whatever they do, that's expected to happen today, and that they're going to take effect. Is the district council going to do anything to change the laws at some point? Is there urgency?
The short answer to your question is that the D.C. Circuit may issue what's called its mandate today. Distributing its mandate will mean that the District of Columbia can no longer enforce the good reason requirement. Nonetheless, individuals who wish to carry a concealed weapon in the District of Columbia will have to apply in order to do so, and they'll have to follow the process that is well outlined by the Metropolitan Police Department. There's additional information on the MPD website.
So, Mr. Hussein, when someone applies for concealed carry and meets all the requirements, at the end they're not asked for this good reason, and then if you meet all the requirements now, you can get a concealed carry permit?
That is correct. The good reason requirement will no longer be an essential element of the application. The chief can talk more about what is required in order to first have a license in the District of Columbia and then to carry a concealed weapon. We definitely want to assure the public that there are threshold requirements that certainly include a training, a criminal background check, confirmation of stability of mental health, and other important factors that the court's decisions does not touch. Thanks, Paul.
Is the city considering changing its gun laws to compensate for this ruling? And so how will they be changed?
Peter, I'll allow perhaps the council member to address that.
Thank you. So as the Attorney General said, right now there's no legislative change that is needed to address the specifics of this ruling, but the council will continue to look at legislation that may be needed on all aspects of this, but there's nothing specific to this ruling where we need to make any legislative change at this exact moment.
Is there a way where you can strengthen restrictions on concealed carry without running afoul of this court ruling?
I will certainly, and I think that many of my colleagues will agree, that we want to continue looking at ways to have smart, strong laws that are on the books, so we will be looking at everything.
Chief, can you talk about how many licenses you have now, how many licenses you expect to issue?
know, there's no way to guess how many, I'd be speculating as to how many people will apply now. I think it's really important to re-emphasize that you need a carry permit in the District of Columbia to carry a firearm. If you do not currently have a carry permit and you carry a firearm in the District of Columbia, you will be arrested, you will be charged, and you will be prosecuted. So hopefully nobody leaves here today with that misimpression. We will tweak our process. It's actually, for us, it's a very small change to the process. All we do is eliminate the good reason provision in the application process. All of the other stringent requirements that we have in the District of Columbia to obtain a carry permit will remain intact. There is, it's about 120, a little bit over 120 folks in the District of Columbia currently have a permit to carry a license. I mean, a license to carry a firearm.
So Chief, could you give us the numbers of how many people have applied for a carry permit? If you could tell us how many people have gotten those, how many of those that you rejected were based on good reason fraud?
So to date, we have 668 applications to carry a permit, carry a firearm in the District of Columbia. 130 were issued, 3 were revoked, and 4 have expired. That leaves us with 123 active carry licenses in the district. And we had 444 that were denied for the good reason requirement.
So were any denied for reasons other than the good reason?
Yes.
Do you have data on that?
What is the difference? Who's good with math?
Is that something you can just send us?
I can. I can share these numbers with you.
Is the good reason clause here subjective? And who makes that decision?
It's really not subjective, Paul. It's somebody has to describe, or used to have to describe, and it's no longer a requirement, that they either carried large sums of money in the District of Columbia would be one situation, or if they had a situation where they were personally in danger. And those are it's pretty easy to determine, at least the applications that I have seen. They're pretty clear-cut decisions.
Sam. Basically, anybody can get a gun permit now. If you're not a fellow or have some mental issue and they want to go through the process, anybody.
There are, in the District of Columbia, there are requirements for getting a carry license. There will be a criminal background check. There will be evaluation of somebody's propensity for violence. There'll be an evaluation of their mental health. And then there is a training requirement to get that. So there is a process. And I want to reemphasize the fact, I don't want to give anyone the misimpression that they can just go out there and carry a gun right now, because we don't want anyone running afoul of the law. Come over to 300 Indiana Avenue if you're interested in getting all of the information that you need. We will be updating our website so it's clear to folks what they need to and the requirements for getting a carry permit in the District of Columbia.
So, Chief, what's the mayor and the have you been pressured by other jurisdictions, like, say, Los Angeles or Chicago? Have they been calling you saying, don't do this because we don't want this court ruling?
The Attorney General may have more to say about that. I haven't gotten any calls from fellow mayors about the court ruling, but I think we should focus on the fact that our decisions are based on what's best for Washington, D.C. and the residents of Washington, D.C. And what is important to note is that while the good reason part of our concealed carry law was invalidated by the courts, all of the rest of the requirements related to carrying a concealed weapon are in place. And so opening up the case and taking the chance at the Supreme Court actually puts us and the remainder of our concealed carry law also in jeopardy.
I certainly understood your first question, so let me focus on that. I have received several phone calls from folks around the country, both elected officials and non-elected officials, weighing in on the seriousness and difficulty of the decision that we have before us, all respecting, candidly, the decision that we made as our decision, but certainly weighing in on the implications that an adverse Supreme Court ruling, if we were to take the case to the court, might have on other jurisdictions, including their own. As Mayor Bowser clearly and forcefully stated, at the end of the day, the decision was made and based on what we sincerely believe is in the best interest of the District of Columbia. As you know, I talked to Brian about many issues, and I have spoken with Brian about this issue. Thank you. You know, Brian was focused on Maryland, and Brian wanted Maryland's good reason law to maintain, and I certainly respect his advocacy on that piece. There are no other questions. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Sam. What did you ask?
What could you possibly lose if you went to the Supreme Court? What could they overturn that would affect the city? What else is at stake?
Well, let me tell you what was at stake. Immediately, the good reason requirement that is now applicable in 3 additional federal circuits, arguably 4, the Second Circuit, the Third Circuit, the Fourth Circuit, and the Ninth Circuit, the relevant states, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, and California. Their law would be at stake. What's important for the District of Columbia in that regard geographically is that most of the illegal weapons in the District of Columbia find their way to the District of Columbia by the South, the southern states that have far more liberal gun laws. If we were to lose this case before the Supreme Court, it is true that the District of Columbia worried, I think for good reason, that guns might flow not only from the South, illegal guns, but also from the North. So that was a factor. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, guys, back in the digital newsroom now with Terrence. He's saying hey. As we move into the afternoon, that was, again, the Attorney General and then Mayor, of course, Bowser, and Police Chief Peter Newsham on this new decision to essentially not put up for review to the Supreme Court of D.C. The fact that they're invalidating certain portions of the requirements that are needed to hold a gun. But you saw at the end, he said, don't go out there buying guns. There's still a lot of restrictions, et cetera. So a small portion of that, the decision today from the Attorney General, just that they will not be reviewing that further. Right now we get a live source in Los Angeles. Let's go over there. This is DACA protests, guys. Looks like there's some people. I'm just kind of getting this in now, so I haven't been able to evaluate it. But in the streets with what looks like, I don't know.
Furniture.
Yeah, tables. See if we have any sound. Don't have any sound, but this is, I think this is downtown LA. And people are protesting here. I know this is a story that Tom Fitzgerald, our reporter, is going to be talking about today a little more, but this is a look into, look at, they're stopping cars in the middle of the road. Camera crews obviously there. So this is set up. This is a thing. They are planned out. They're making a statement in Los Angeles. But guys, still, we got eyes on Mandalay Bay in Vegas. There's the hotel. I know. Still a really sad story, leaving a lot of us speechless, of course, from Sunday. And the investigation continues into who this guy was and if we'll ever even find a reason or a motive. They're looking back into his past and gathering all the information together. But let's go over now to another really cool event from this morning, guys. Vice President Pence had attended and hosted and spoke at the first meeting of the now revived National Space Council. This was in Chantilly, Virginia, so really close by to us. And it was a convened meeting with the Smithsonian Air and Space, many senior officials and aerospace industry leaders. And there were projects and presentations on space and national security and people from NASA and all that cool SpaceX stuff. And Vice President Pence got to speak at it. And we're going to check that out. So we're going to go to that video next, and then we'll come back in, and that will probably close out our show for the day. But yeah, let's go over that video.
He said they will carry our nation to even greater heights of discovery and inspire our children and grandchildren every bit as much as their forebears in this storied American program. Those 12 men and women are of a generation, now the largest on earth, learned long after we took our first small steps into the next frontier. The work begun here today will map out the giant leaps they will make on behalf of their country. Captain Gene Cernan, the last man on the moon, described the Apollo program as a decade out of time, a 21st century event born into the middle of the 20th century. 50 years later, the time is at hand for the heirs of Apollo to take up the mantle. It will be up to that new generation of innovators and explorers to lead the next great adventure. It is up to us to pass them the torch. It is now my great pleasure to welcome the Chair of the National Space Council and the Vice President of the United States, the Honorable Mike Pence.
Thank you all. Thank you all. General Daley, thank you for that kind introduction. And thank you for your extraordinary record of service to the United States of America and to this national treasure. Members of the Cabinet, distinguished members of Congress who join us here today, honored guests, and to our gracious host, the Smithsonian Institution, the National Air and Space Museum, and all the men and women of the Stephen F. Udvar-Hazy Center. It is my great honor to be with you today here at the inaugural meeting of the reconstituted National Space Council. And I bring greetings from a man who is committed to American leadership on Earth and in the boundless expanse of space, the 45th President of the United States of America, President Donald Trump. In his inaugural address, the President rededicated America once again to lead in the heavens and, in his words, to unlock the mysteries of space. And to guide this new era of American space leadership, President Trump relaunched the National Space Council, and it is my great honor. In fact, it's very humbling for me to have the opportunity to serve as its chair at the first meeting in nearly a quarter century. I can't think of a better place for this first meeting than right here at the National Air and Space Museum. In the hangars and galleries of this museum, some of the great monuments of human ingenuity and daring have come to rest. The first airplane to complete a transcontinental voyage across the United States, which took 49 days in 1911. Behind all of you, the spy plane that led America's reconnaissance operations during the Cold War, faster than 3 times the speed of sound and at more than 16 miles above the Earth, the legendary SR-71 Blackbird. And the shuttle behind me that ferried astronauts to space for more than 26 years and logged a record of 148 million miles. The Space Shuttle Discovery is a national treasure. Each vessel here represents a pinnacle in the history of man's quest for knowledge and adventure. They remind us of the giants on whose shoulders we all stand. They inspire the millions of visitors who pass through this museum every year to dream bigger, work harder, and push farther in our own day. Today, in the shadow of this history, we pledge to do what America has always done. We will push the boundaries of human knowledge. We will blaze new trails into that great frontier, and we will once again astonish the world as we boldly go to meet our future in the skies and in the stars. Now, it's altogether fitting that we chose this week for the first meeting of the National Space Council. Yesterday marked the 60th anniversary of Sputnik, that 184-pound satellite that changed the course of history. On that day, 6 decades ago yesterday, the race for space began, and the then Soviet Union took an early lead. But the sight of that light blinking across that October sky spurred America to action. We refused to accept a future in space written by the enemies of freedom, and so the United States of America vowed to claim our rightful place as the undisputed leader in the exploration of the heavens. And 12 years later, with one giant leap for mankind, America led in space. But more than half a century later, we've ceded ground. And so we gather here today to renew this same mission in our time. By reviving the National Space Council, President Donald Trump has declared to all of the world, America will lead in space once again. For my part, as I said, it's an honor to chair this council. I caught space fever when I was a kid back in a small town in southern Indiana. Some of the most precious memories of my youth were my little family gathered around a black and white television watching images of American heroes making history in the stars. As a member of Congress, I actually asked to serve on the NASA subcommittee in my very first year in the Congress. I had the privilege, along with my wife and all of our children, to attend several space shuttle launches as a family. I actually have no doubt that, as I told the general this morning, a fellow Marine, with my son, that I think my son was inspired to be a Marine Corps aviator when he was a 10-year-old boy, sat in those grandstands and watched with awe as America's astronauts hurtled into the heavens. Now, I said at the time that the sights and sounds of the launch at Cape Canaveral were miraculous. It was almost as though as the flames came from beneath the ship, it was as though the earth was giving birth to a piece of the sun and sending it home. The power and the symbolism of unquestioned American leadership was inspiring to us all. But in recent years, the clarity of our purpose and the confidence of our conviction that propelled the United States to be a vanguard of space exploration seems to have waned. America seems to have lost our edge in space, and those days are over. Because the American people have never lost our passion to explore space and uncover its secrets. This summer, I visited the Kennedy Space Center at Cape Canaveral, the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where I met with men and women of NASA, including, as the general said, the newest class of astronauts. They still embody, as generations did before, they embody the courage and excellence that's long inspired the American people. But for too long, our government's commitment has failed to match our people's spirit and meet our nation's needs. The truth is that America entered this new millennium without a coherent policy, a coherent vision for outer space. And in the absence of American leadership, other nations have seized the opportunity to stake their claim in the infinite frontier. Rather than lead in space, too often we've chosen to drift. And as we learned 60 years ago, when we drift, we fall behind. Our struggle to define the direction and purpose of America's space program dates back decades to the post-Apollo period. We had just won the race to the moon, and suddenly the question became, what should we do? Where should we go next? In the debate that followed, sending Americans to the moon was treated as a triumph to be remembered, but not repeated. Every passing year that the moon remained squarely in the rearview mirror further eroded our ability to return to the lunar domain and made it more likely that we would forget why we ever wanted to go in the first place. And now we find ourselves in a position where the United States has not sent an American astronaut beyond low Earth orbit in 45 years. Across the board, our space program has suffered from apathy and neglect. When the Space Shuttle program ended in 2011, we had 4 years to find an assured way for our astronauts to get into space. In the meantime, we agreed to pay Russia to hitch a ride on their rockets to the International Space Station. But 4 years turned into 5, Then 5 years turned into 6, and here we are in 2017, still relying on the Russians to ferry our astronauts to the International Space Station at a cost per seat that now stands at more than $76 million. Meanwhile, rather than competing with other nations to create the best space technology, the previous administration chose capitulation. According to the U.S. intelligence community, Russia and China are pursuing a full range of anti-satellite technology to reduce U.S. military effectiveness, and they're increasingly considering attacks against satellite systems as part of their future warfare doctrine. America's abdication of leadership in space has spurred our nation to action once more. And just as with Sputnik 6 decades ago, we have resolved, with the leadership of President Donald Trump, to never again let America fall behind in the race for space. It's what brings us here today. And under the President's leadership, we will restore our proud legacy of leadership on this next great frontier, and America will lead again. Twice before, America's had a National Space Council charged with advising the President on national policy and strategy for space. The first Space Council helped marshal America's energies and skills during the infancy of our attempts to reach the stars. And it was under the Council's watch that America put a man in outer space, put a man on the moon with less than a decade between them. Now, President Trump has charged this National Space Council with reviewing America's current policy and our long-range goals and coordinating all national space activities from security to commerce to exploration. Today, more than ever before, our nation's prosperity, security, and identity depend on American leadership in space. And the membership of this council, all members of our cabinet, critical members of our national security infrastructure, reflect the multifaceted nature of our work. Joining me here today as members of this council are several members of the President's cabinet, leaders in defense, intelligence, commerce, transportation, space exploration, science, and technology. Would you please give them another round of applause for making this a priority? But to fully unlock the mysteries of space, President Trump recognizes we must look beyond the halls of government and for input and guidance. At the President's direction, the National Space Council will also, in his words, draw from the expertise and insights from scientists, innovators, and business leaders like never before. We will tap into the bottomless well of American innovation once again. American companies are on the cutting edge of space technology, and they're developing new rockets, spaceships, and satellites that will take us further into space faster than ever before. Like the railroads that brought American explorers, entrepreneurs, and settlers to tame the Wild West, these groundbreaking new technologies will open untold opportunities to extend the range of American action and values into the new worlds of outer space. And by fostering much stronger partnerships between the federal government and the realm of industry, and bringing the full force of our national interest to bear, American leadership in space will be assured. The objectives of the National Space Council are clear. The President has charged us with laying the foundation for America to maintain a constant commercial human presence in low Earth orbit. From there, we will turn our attention back toward our celestial neighbors. We will return American astronauts to the moon, not only to leave behind footprints and flags, but to build the foundation we need to send Americans to Mars and beyond. The moon will be a stepping stone, a training ground, a venue to strengthen our commercial and international partnerships as we refocus America's space program toward human space exploration. And under President Trump, this council will spur the development of space technology to protect America's national security. Space is vital to our national security. I saw firsthand when I visited Schriever Air Force Base and the Redstone Arsenal earlier this year. As I said, our adversaries are aggressively developing jamming, hacking, and other technologies intended to cripple military surveillance, navigation, communication systems. In the face of these actions, America must be as dominant in space as we are here on Earth. My friends, the task that lies before us will require the highest level of commitment and dedication. Now, the work before us will be difficult, but difficulty always brings out America's best. And America's best is unbeatable by anyone, anytime. We won the race to the moon a half a century ago, And now we will win the 21st century in space. Under President Trump's leadership and with the guidance of this National Space Council, the United States will usher in a new era of space leadership for our nation that will benefit every facet of our national life, will strengthen our economy as we unlock new opportunities, new technologies, and new sources of prosperity, will inspire our children to seek education in science, technology, engineering, and math, will enhance our defense and advance the security of our citizens, but most of all, as the President believes, we will renew the American spirit itself and rekindle our belief that America can accomplish anything. As President Trump has said, in his words, it is America's destiny to be the leader amongst nations on our adventure into the great unknown. And today we begin that latest chapter of that adventure. But as we embark, let us have faith. Faith, as the old book teaches us, that if we rise to the heavens, he will be there. And as we make plans and we prepare recommendations for our president and our leaders in the Congress, we will also do so with the mind that there will be courageous men and women who will make those plans a reality. And our faith in them and our faith that they will not go alone will sustain us as we go, as it ever has before. So with thanks for all the members of the Space Council, thanks for all the honored guests from whom we will hear, welcome to the first gathering of the National Space Council. Let's get to work.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Marilyn Houston, President and CEO, Lockheed Martin. Dennis Muhlenberg, President and CEO, The Boeing Company. David Thompson, President and CEO, Orbital ATK.
All right, guys, with that, we're going to bring you back into the newsroom here and continue our coverage on our other digital platforms. You can check out the White House press briefing, which is coming up next. Here's a live look inside the room. That's going to be coming up next on our Facebook page, so check out the stream there. And we'll leave you here with a nice little shot of what it looks like in D.C. today on this perfect morning. I was out on the Anacostia River this morning as part of our volunteer week, which was amazing to help pick up trash from kayaks on the Anacostia, and it was really great to be in that area of D.C., just seeing the sunrise on this gorgeous day in D.C. So with that, guys, we're going to take you to the White House press briefing on our Facebook page, close down this stream here on YouTube. We'll see you tomorrow, as usual, for our stream on the app and on our website and right here on YouTube. And you can feel free to always join us, guys. Subscribe to our channel here by pressing that red button to be part of our channel, and you can see us pop up on your app and on your phone when we are live. And you can see behind me there, little promo to subscribe to our channel. That's what we are. So inside, guys, the newsroom here, live look. We're going to close it up for the day, but more coverage on our broadcast, of course, tonight and on our digital platforms. So join us there, guys. We'll see you soon. Enjoy this nice shot of the Capitol. Have a great day.